Hello and welcome to this very interesting panel discussion on how small manufacturers can go digital and adopt Industry 4.0 or digital manufacturing best practices. I'm Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting at CyberMedia Research, and I would be moderating today's discussion. Contrary to popular perception, digital manufacturing is not just meant for large manufacturers. It can also help small manufacturers achieve greater agility, efficiency, productivity, reliability, speed and quality, thereby giving them a huge competitive advantage and cost savings. So the question obviously is, how can small manufacturers really do that? How can they roll out digital technologies? And what are some of the challenges involved? And there are so many other questions. So to discuss this and more, we have with us a panel of experts from manufacturing, and it is my pleasure to introduce them to this panel. We have Dr. Arvind Tilak, who is the CEO, Ascent Intellimation. Welcome, Dr. Tilak. We have Shailendra Mathur, who is the business head for North and West at Maxim SMT. Welcome, Shailendra ji. We have Vipin Rawat, who is the senior solution manager at Unicorps. Welcome, Vipin.
Hi, sir.
So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today, for this interesting panel discussion. Dr. Tilak, I'll start with you. And, as I was saying that digital manufacturing is not just meant for large manufacturers. Do you really see a big difference in perception about digital manufacturing between small and large companies?
Thanks, Anil, for having me in the panel and this interesting discussion. I think this divide between small and big, or have nots, which way you want to look at socially, in the industrial world, and especially when the digital world is helping us kind of a jump over the limitations of being small. What's happening with UPI, even a small bhajiwala can do business anywhere. So that whole mindset game of small and big has undergone a tremendous change, and the pandemic, with all its bad things and horrible things, has helped this change of mindset. In fact, what we are seeing is the medium and the small enterprises, which are owner driven or where CEO is in touch with day-to-day realities, unlike a large MNC where they're layered approach of management. We see those organizations are actually more agile, more keen, more excited about leveraging digital. Simply for two things. One is that as a small or a medium scale enterprise, they know that their competitiveness hereafter will come from being smart. And the definition of being smart has multiple aspects, of course, but coming back to manufacturing, that smartness in manufacturing has to come from smart solutions, smart manufacturing, smart ecosystem and everything, and smart people. So that's one excitement for competitive advantage. So this is a very strategic angle that we are seeing in the small and the medium businesses. And the second thing we are seeing is that they are seeing this as an opportunity where they can really take on the biggies. I can dream big, right? I can dream something that was not possible before. And if I have to be exporting globally, have to have customers outside, I will have to be digitally enabled to enable my customers to be connected with my manufacturing process, not just post delivery. And with both things driving their, I would say, business processes, their strategies and their planning, their adoption intensity, I would say, if that's a word, it's actually higher than the larger companies. Larger companies seem to have put in place more structured approach, having a digital transformation officer or a team there and so on and so forth. However, actually, we have seen that instead of enabling and fast pacing the adoption, some of these structures are actually slowing it down. And I don't want to, put any examples here, but that's exactly what we are seeing. Because at the end of the day, all organizations, big or small, are still in the discovery phase. They want to try it out. They want to see how the ROIs happen, how people adopt and things like that. So even in large companies, there are smaller projects, which are like a small company. So that part. So smalls are becoming big, bigs are becoming small. And that's how we see in the adoption part, at least in the domains where we are working. That's what I see, Ariel. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Tilak. Yes, You're right. It is giving equal opportunity to everyone. given the way things are happening moving forward. Shailendra ji, would you like to add something to that? And also, if a small manufacturer decides to go smart today, where should he start? And if you can explain the process in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Arvindji, it was a great kickoff. I think you've said the right thing. You've said the right opening, should I say, arguments. And I think digital is giving a very level playing ground for everyone. So whatever your misery, it's visible to the world. Whatever your greatness, it is visible to the world. So the time is that you can't cry anymore. You need to set your own bearings right. So I think from I've been talking about, I used to work for a German company earlier, and typically, as you would find, that most German companies were ahead of their times in terms of technology. And I've been talking about this for a long time in my career as well, but it's only now that we are really seeing this thing happening. And what small manufacturers should really be careful about is not think the other way, this is not for me. I think for any project that you're undertaking, any manufacturer, because we are a manufacturer as well as we are providing solutions to people who are manufacturing. So we are seeing both sides of the world, and we are very small SME or MME kind of a manufacturer ourselves. So I think from the very onset of any project, whether it's a greenfield project or it's a brownfield project, you must be aware that today it's a connected world. So you have to start with something, and you have to start with some building blocks. And as you grow, these building blocks should also grow. But these building blocks should really be connected. So for me, I think if somebody was to ask me that if I'm a small manufacturer and setting up a unit, I think the first thing I would say that whatever machines that you're buying, please make sure that they are Industry 4.0 compliant. That means the firmware and the hardware has to be at some point of time has scalability in terms of MES or in terms of connectivity or SPC data that you're collecting. I think that's the first thing that comes to my mind. So many PLIs for telecom happening, PLI for industrial appliances, PLI for solar, so many things are happening, and everything is backed by electronics today. There is no mechanical thing or electrical thing, everything is electronics driven. And we're talking about EVs as well. So whosoever you are, whether you're making camera devices, mobile phone, or even chargers, I think what is the first step is that whatever equipment that you buy needs to be compliant for Industry 4.0. That's the first thing. And of course, then, whether you're looking at factors like overall equipment efficiency, or you're looking at how much yield or throughput of your machines, but that's directly related to your output and your productivity. I think all that will only make sense when you have data in front of you. So I think more importantly, because you're small and you're aiming to get big, you need to have data as you go. It's a very dynamic world. And unless you have data, you will not be able to do anything. Unless you have dashboards in front of you in very small and minimal ways, then you will not be able to move ahead. You'll not be able to make the proper decisions. So A, machines have to be industry compliant. B, there has to be some method by way of which all your data is captured by some SPC tool. And then there has to be, as you move forward, your overall equipment, how is your efficiency of the equipment? How is it going? Is it really performing? Or is it the yield is higher? I think these are the things that one needs to take care. So whether you're manufacturing, a small-time manufacturer, just like because the mobile phone industry is booming, and no one, even Apple is not providing you chargers anymore with your phone. It's so expensive. So I want to make phone, chargers for any kind of phones or adapters for laptops. I think the key is to build blocks from the very onset, because then you need to then integrate all these blocks at some point of time to make the whole thing function as one unit. So that's my take on it. I hope there's some sort of sensibility isn't there in my answer.
No, absolutely. I think, you've kind of given a really good summary of how should really companies, where should they really start. Absolutely. We are getting into a connected world. So it's important to, have building blocks that can connect to each other, and, for which you require machinery that is Industry 4.0 compliant, and, you need to have the data and be able to make sense out of it. So very, very valid points. Thank you so much. Vipin, if you'd like to add something to that, please do that. But one question, I'd like to ask you is, as everyone said that, digital transformation is no longer a buzzword, but a necessity today. So ever since, we got into this current situation, the pandemic, have you really seen an increase, in small manufacturers reaching out to you for digitization of their facilities?
Well, a big yes, obviously, when the pandemic 19 happened, so it has many adverse effects, and it has driven the economic crisis, and followed by the national, lockdown. So it acted like a final nail on the coffin for the MSMEs, the startups. The reason being they are operating traditionally, their huge dependency on the manual way of working has worsened the situation. So nowadays, when I see the owners of the MSMEs and the startups organization, they are pretty much aware about the digitization. They understand the importance of being digitization, getting digitization, upgrading themselves, and working in a more organized way. So yes, they have the awareness.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. That awareness is definitely key, and probably the first thing, to move towards, digitization. So glad to hear that, what you're seeing in the market is that awareness is very much there, and there is, a need now that organizations feel for, moving towards digitization. Dr. Tilak, what are your experiences in terms of managing the, rollout, and what challenges do you really see in small companies?
Uh, Before I come to the rollout, I'll just take 2 points before a project gets rolled out. What we have seen is that's a little bit of, I would say, not negative, but that's a peculiar thing with MSMEs, is that MSMEs tend to under allocate on the budget side and on the talent side for the projects they want to undertake. And suddenly you are trying to cross a mountain, and then you're not prepared with the budget and the people for that, and then that mountain starts looking very, very very big. So we have been trying to get across this message to the MSMEs, the owners and the CEOs, that let's budget properly for what you want to roll out. You can start small. You don't have to boil the ocean in one go, but whatever you want to start, whatever you want to hold in your hands, because we always say, I mean, one mantra we give them is plan top down. Look at the big picture, what you want to do, and look at across the organization, but essentially come back and try and do small projects, one unit, one line, few machines, one BU, and prove the results, do the ROI, get people on board and move. But the budgets and the talent seems to be, not that they don't have money, not that they don't have budget, not that they cannot allocate, but some of the discussions tend to push that budget part too much in the front. And we have seen that people still try to go with the L1 kind of a thing. And what has happened is that, again, I'm not commenting on one or the other company. There are a lot of automation companies which were there. I have suddenly come to the saying that we also do Industry 4.0. And we have actually seen people underquoting for the projects. And then end of the day, what happens is that project is treated as a non-successful, or the POC did not work, or the results that we were looking at did not happen, or we didn't get the analytics that we were looking, or we wanted AI, but AI without data is what people want. And you can't do AI without data. I mean, data is so important. So those are the limitations on the MSMEs. Unlike a large organization where there'll be special people, specialized talent will be available, whether at a digital ops or anything like that. So before even the rollout starts, we see this as a challenge. And we have seen that the projects start happening. They are very excited. They want to start tomorrow, but this starts sometimes becomes a problem. So we have tried to educate. We conduct, training sessions, deep dive workshops for the management as to how to hold IIoT in their hands, how to do the ROI and cultural transformation, all those nuts and bolts of digital project that we talk about. So we walk them through those 9 yards before we even talk about the project, because that I would say preparation, or that home ground being ready, becomes very important. If this is taken care of properly, then the rollout, I would say, pains are much lesser, because then people are trained, people are available. And actually currently we are running a program for training digital champions in our current client companies. Because when we have a digitally champion trained who can hold that project in hand, get people on board, our life and their life becomes much more smooth and much more enjoyable. And so we are investing big time into talent, big time into this part. Solutions and technology can happen. That's really not a challenge today. But these are the nuts and bolts, or these are the challenges, or these are the aspects on which we work substantially. Again, in India, I always, on a lighter note, say that people want to see, "Pehle kidhar kiya hai?" And that's a good question, very valid question. And people kind of are in a wait mode. Let somebody else do it and I will do it, thing like that. What is going to happen with this is that we are losing time. They are losing time. Nation is losing time. And then suddenly we are in a mad rush to do something. And that's not. So let's plan, let's sit down, let's sit back, let's do a proper analysis of what we want, where we are, where we want to go in 1 to 3 years to 5 years, and then do that project rollout. And wherever we have done this, wherever the companies have worked with us on this, the projects have been very successful. But we also have had cases where things were not very successful. And I try to give the reasons, because I think the learnings from these failures will be more than learnings from the success. So that's my reading, Anil, on what we have done.
No, absolutely. I think thank you for sharing that point. And in fact, good that you brought in the part about the ROI as well, because I think ultimately every business will look at the ROI for rolling out anything. And you've given a really good perspective around that, and why it's not a good idea to get undercoat and not be able to deliver. That kind of doesn't really give a good impression. So thank you for that. Yeah. Shailendraji, in addition to the automation and digitization of production system, which other parts of a factory are digitized, and typically which software and hardware are really required to make a factory completely smart?
So thank you very much for asking this. I think like Arvindji said to me also, in this world today, people are the key. Actually, they always were, but now it's more glaring. But I think the eventual goal for every factory should be, everyone wants to go big, eventual goal should be a smart factory. And if you look at the building blocks, so there are 5 levels of connectivity. One is, of course, the equipment level, the base level, whatever equipment you buy, there has to be some connectivity. And then on top of that, these equipments need to talk to each other. Of course, any manufacturing has 2 equipments. And then if there is a line, that the whole line needs to talk to each other, because you need data from all the entire. Then, of course, you're going above, then there is a factory level. All the equipments in the factory, they are talking to each other, or they are able to actually assimilate data and give data. And then finally, of course, there is a multiple factory scenario where you're having multiple factories and you're collecting data, you have dashboards and so on and so forth. As you go, as a company, then you are able to, seamlessly integrate everything. So these are the levels of connectivity. But I think if you're looking at, this is one part of the aspect is, of course, hardware connectivity. And then, of course, you're looking at work groups. There are work groups. So there are workflows. One is a material workflow. When is the material coming? Where is it going? How is it placed? And so on and so forth. Am I having tracking of that? When do I need it? How do I need it? What product has to be done? So one is material management. This is the one workflow. Then, of course, the second workflow is the preparation. And all of us are doing it. Each company is doing it. Today, they are maybe doing it in Excel worksheets or their own MIS, small MIS. Everyone is doing these workflows. Second is, of course, preparation, workflow preparation. This is something that needs to be automated. Then, of course, you're also doing some planning. Which product, which manufacturing line, when. So this is also another workflow which needs to be taken care of. And then addition to that, there is another workflow, which is, of course, nowadays, you don't do actual production without a run-through, a trial run. So there has to be a virtual production. So, okay, I need to know what are my blocks as we go, rather than hitting them when I'm, doing the actual run. Let me have a virtual production. That's another that also needs to be digitized at some point of time. Then, of course, process optimization. So whatever process, whatever you're producing, there has to be optimization before you actually get into mass manufacturing. Because I think the greatest challenge for India is to do mass manufacturing. We actually really don't know, to my mind, what is mass manufacturing. Like having 5,000 laptops being produced in a day. This is like mass manufacturing, or 10,000 laptops. But that's what our definition of mass manufacturing is different. So process has to be optimized. We need to know, okay, what is the process. So this is one workflow. Then, of course, the production, as we all know, there has to be a workflow about production. And then the monitoring of the factory and the complete integration of the factory. So there are different softwares, tools available. For instance, we have a tool from a company called ASM. They have various work groups, and these workflows they are different, what should I say, modules which operate for, there is a planning module, there is a material management module, there is a production module, and one can scale up as you go. And finally, when you have one good large factory with a smart factory, you can all integrate all these workflows into one macro workflow. So I think from that perspective, whether you're in the electronic side or some other side of business, as long as you're in manufacturing, you will have to take care of these workflows.
Thank you for sharing those, very nicely elaborated on, various aspects of, where do you really get started in terms of, doing this kind of digitization. So that's a very detailed, response. Thank you for doing that, giving that answer. Vipin, let me ask you a slightly different question. We talked about creating all these, process workflows and, being able to automate and look at, the process in more detail. But, when you're actually shifting to this kind of smart manufacturing, it can make the, existing workforce anxious, in terms of, they lose their job and all that, especially in a small company, that fear is likely to be even higher. So, that can lead to various issues, in terms of opposition or sabotage or whatever. How should really a smart manufacturer deal with its, workforce post announcement of digitization and during the transition process? You're on mute, Vipin.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and it's like such orthodox kind of, the thought process has always been there. I mean, like pre-digitization as well. So that's the basic, the employer and the manufacturer needs to convey strongly within the organization and to its employees that the technology and the manpower go hands in hand. So technology without manpower is nothing. And again, the manpower without technology is like, you are keep yourself involved in doing the duplicacy of efforts would be there. And you would be procuring a hell lot of time to completing your task. So my answer would be the core responsibility of the employer to convince its manpower that technology has always been for the simplification of their work.
Yeah, from our building on that, from our perspective, because you're always talking about manufacturing and large scale productivity, and so I think the key is, for me, for my generation, of course, this is something typically new. So one would tend to think, I'll be out of the league in the first place. But I think what digitalization is doing is removing blocks. So one has to decide as a workflow, including myself. Am I a block which is of assistance, or am I a block which is not of assistance? So of course, the mundane, the regular thing will all be automated, because pick from A, place in B, pick from B, place in C. You don't need any smart intervention. So I think, to my mind, the smartness is that now we need smart people who make decisions. Smart decisions take on data. So if there is a run-of-the-mill production happening, then okay, automation will do. But if there is a decision making, for instance, a machine decides, I don't know whether this is good or bad, or this is somewhere on the gray side, then of course there is human intervention required. And then of course this human should be capable to make that decision, should be skills or ability or knowledge, whatever you call it, should be there. So this is one part. So I think is going to, I personally feel that a lot of reorganization, juggling will happen, because people will look for smart manpower. So it's not necessarily I'm ramping up from X production to 2X production. So I need 2X manpower. So nowadays, when we talk to customers, they're saying, okay, I want to go from, let's say, manufacturing one solar cell assembly line, which does maybe X amount of work, to double the capacity. But how can I not increase the manpower? So I think those are the things that will be more critical in decision making. And so people who are really workforce, which is really keen to work hard, keen to adapt, and keen to change, and keen to learn, I think they will survive. And of course, the workforce, which is an impending block, because now in the digital world, everything is visible, right? Nothing is hidden. So we have instances where the line is perfectly working fine, perfectly in the morning shift and the second shift, 8-hour shift, but in the night shift, it is giving some problem. So it turns out the people are sleeping in the night shift. So, but this visibility is available. So I think human beings also need to ramp up. I think, and human beings also need to look at the ways and means to upscaling our own self. No need to feel threatened, but I think the need to upscale.
So very valid point that you raised, that human beings do definitely need to upskill. But I think from an organization perspective also, do you think that there is a need to kind of give them training in the right perspective so that they are also geared up for smart manufacturing? Is that something that you also do?
Yeah, we do, of course. But when I joined work in 90s, my senior manager we used to have meetings. So my senior manager used to ask me, "Did you come to the meeting or you were sent to the meeting?" So I think the key is that how, of course, as an organization, we always try to do our best, upscale people, new technology. I think last year we did 52 trainings in our own company. So as we were locked down, and we utilized all that time, and also this year also we've had I think about 10 odd trainings. So, but I think it really depends on the end user who's receiving the training. I think that is critical, how one is absorbing whatever is being imparted, because knowledge is available, but how one is really absorbing it is the key. So for our focus always has been within the company as to, as managers, I think key for us is to find the right skill set in the right place. And I think that will be the critical part as far as management is concerned within the organization. But yes, of course, the management can take a decision that yes, we will do upscaling, and there will be programs, and there will be trainings, and there will be modules, and there will be data available. But finding the right person for the right job will be the key, as far as that's how we understand.
Dr. Tilak, maybe you want to. This is a very interesting discussion always, in terms of digitization versus upskilling of the manpower, and making sure that you have the right manpower in numbers as well as skill sets. So maybe you could add to that. But another point on this is that manufacturing is not a standalone process, right? It's a part of a larger ecosystem that kind of includes supply chain, it includes customers, raw material suppliers, government, etc., etc. And this entire ecosystem will definitely not be really digitally ready. So keeping all this in mind, which sector do you think are currently best suited for smart manufacturing, amongst all the manufacturers that are there?
Yeah. Before I come to that, I'll just take 2 points which Vipin and Shailendra had mentioned. So you asked in terms of preparing people for the change, and you were post the project. I think that's where things start going wrong, that you need to talk to people pre-project and kind of get them on board that what is going to be done is not a surprise, not a threat, not against you, but actually is going to enable you even more to do more efficiently, do more this thing. And one big factor that we have seen, and we again in our trainings, I always give an example of banks. Way back when the first time the computers were introduced in the banks, unions went on strike. I'm sure some of us remember that. Today, you don't go to a bank if it doesn't use this computer, right? I mean, that would be completely not possible. So that's a kind of a change which is going to happen, whether you like it or not, whether you're ready or not. This change is going to happen. The change will benefit people who prepare themselves, who are ready for that, who are excited about it. The change will absolutely bulldoze people who are not ready. whether it's an organization or an individual, the role applies same everywhere. So it's for an individual and for an organization to get ready to take benefit of what's going to be offered. If they remain, then they are themselves to be blamed. So that's first message that needs to go out. Secondly, India as a country, I always talk to everybody that we cannot do away with our social responsibility of creating jobs. And IT is not going to create the job, services is not going to create that. Agriculture has reached the saturation point. So where are the jobs going to come for millions of young people that we are pushing into our workforce? This is going to come from manufacturing. And creating jobs should be as much priority for every company as doing everything else, right? That's my social responsibility. So no time CEO or anybody should ever give a message that by doing automation, by doing smart, we are going to take away jobs. We in fact say that if you become smart, if you can do more, if you can export, if you can be competitive, actually you're going to create more jobs. So don't talk about taking away jobs. I mean, the same thing the IT sector in US always said about this, right? So, which is not a fact. So that's a very important message. This is cultural message. This is HR message, which has to go very strong from the top right to the bottom before a project starts rolled out. In fact, one of the companies where we went for a visit, the manager said, the plant head said, don't go to the shop floor because people are then suddenly going to see why is this guy coming? Why is he looking at things more critical and things like that? So which obviously means that they had not prepared their people for change, but they wanted change to happen. And that's not going to work, right? So if something goes wrong, they themselves are to be blamed. That's one. So that's the preparation part, that's the training part, which all encompasses into how are you going to do this change management. Today, if you go to a toll station where fast tags are being used, right, you can always argue that some jobs were taken away, right? But the amount of revenue that gets created, amount of chori that was stopped is going to create more jobs, more opportunities. So there is always a linkage to something else. That's a big picture. Now you need to really translate that big picture, bring it down to an individual's level, saying that how this will benefit you, you're the thing. And one of the big message which goes is that smart manufacturing is also safe manufacturing. I mean, we have been to plants where there are two switches without, unless you press those two switches, the blade doesn't operate. But the smart guys, or rather over smart guys, put a brick on top of one switch and just use the other switch. So that whole safety thing is taken for a toss. And then accidents happen. And when the accidents happen, then you start crying, ye kaise ho gaya? You have been doing it for ages. So a smart manufacturing ecosystem is also safe manufacturing ecosystem. And that's a big benefit to a worker, to the factory, to the ecosystem, and to the family. So that's kind of a message. That's kind of a this thing. So there are a lot of positives in that change. What we emphasize on depends on the culture and the way people handle it. And we have seen again, if the preparation is not done well, these things start going wrong. So that's one point I wanted to make on the points which was raised earlier. And to Shailendra's point on that level 5 or the thing, we look at it from the amount of autonomy that will be added. Today, the machines may be autonomous, tomorrow lines may be autonomous, tomorrow plants may be autonomous, like there'll be autopilot like an aircraft where you start a factory and then walk away, just come back if there is a turbulence in the air and then you still want to hold it. So the autonomy in the functioning of the plant is definitely going to go up. Machines are going to be made more smart, right? So if people don't become smart, when the machines are becoming smart, obviously you can't stop machines from being smart because I cannot become smart. I think that would be counterproductive. So that's another very important message that we need to give to the people with whom we are dealing. And yes, on the shop floor, there is a fear, there is an anxiety, and we have seen this in a very big way. But also, let me tell you another story where we went to a plant where the union leader came up to us and says that, when will you implement the smart manufacturing? I said, wow, this is wonderful to hear from a union leader. I said, what's your driver? He says, we get, performance allowance based on the productivity or the products we make or the production we do. And if a machine is down, then production suffers and my people don't get that added money or added benefits. So if you can prevent breakdowns from happening by using smart manufacturing system, we would benefit. I said, that's one big argument. And I try and invite him to every possible conference that I go to, because that's coming from the ground. all my 30,000 feet discussions don't make as much impact as these union leaders impact. So that's where the change needs to happen, right? That's where the change will happen, and I think that's a positivity. Indians per se are very smart. Nobody had to teach a bhajiwala to use GPay. He did it on his own, right? And today we are a UPI driven economy. People may like or may not like demonetization, politics apart, but we are a digital driven economy today. So that's a positivity, that's possible, and that's a change which is happening. To your question of what sectors are more suitable or more right candidates, frankly, the size or the sector doesn't matter. It is the ability of the management to see this as a strategic decision that will drive. And today, I want to city called Solapur, which is in Maharashtra here, and they said we want to manufacture to what is around Solapur, so we can do it. And then there was a one entrepreneur who stood up. He says, "Why? In Solapur, I can make products which I can sell to NASA or to aerospace industry." That's a dream which is possible. So if even if this is a small company, even if it's in a Solapur like city, that's a sector, that's a company which is right candidate for adopting digital. That's of course the discussion, but as a whole, there's a lot of regulatory practices coming down. I mean, the BS6 standard is being rolled out. Traceability is becoming important in pharma, in fertilizers, in automotive, and everything. And that's where smart manufacturing will be kind of the most important thing or absolutely compulsory thing. But there will be other sectors which will follow. So there are right sectors. There are sectors which are more hazardous environments there, where smart manufacturing, autonomous machines, and autonomous processes can add a lot of benefits. So those sectors are right sectors. But actually, we're seeing more adoption on the ground in the discrete manufacturing compared to process manufacturing. Because process manufacturing, in terms of digital, by use of SCADAs and PLCs and DCS systems, was little ahead of the curve compared to discrete. So discrete, whatever it missed on that opportunity, like in India, we missed that complete bus of or opportunity or phase of physical phones, and we straight away jumped to mobile phones. Discrete has that opportunity of missing out that in between period of automation and straight away moving to smart manufacturing. And we see that discrete manufacturing is picking this in a big way compared to process. Process has its own baggage, has its own limitations, or has its own requirements. So it will come up, of course, but so between the sectors or between the verticals, this is what we're seeing. But more and more sectors which are going to be required to be very flexible. And Shailendra gave an excellent example that why should I buy a charger every time I buy a phone? That's completely non-intuitive. So those are the places where contract manufacturing, flexible manufacturing, or customized mass manufacturing is going to happen. And those are the sectors which are really ripe for adoption of smart manufacturing. And that's where we are seeing maximum adoption happening today. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tilak. I think really nicely, answered. Especially, I like that example you gave of the union leader.
Yeah.
That kind of really hits the nail on the head and gives the exact perspective that should be taken by small manufacturers in terms of convincing to move into a smart digitization and all that. Yeah. So really good. Thank you for that. And yeah, I'm surprised to hear.
If you don't mind, when he was talking about this and we were talking to CEO about productivity, the same productivity has a different angle for an individual worker and has a different angle for a CEO. Both are looking at the same data, same productivity, same machine uptime, but you see it differently, like an elephant and that story of our childhood. So that's the interesting piece that's happening in digital. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The different people see at different levels see it very differently. And of course, as you rightly, I was actually surprised to hear that discrete manufacturing is actually looking at embracing smart manufacturing more than process manufacturing. So that's a pretty good insight from your side, and glad to hear that discrete manufacturing is moving more towards digitization and all that. Shailendra ji, just one question to you. In terms of timing, you explained the process so well in terms of how do you really start, where do you really start. But, when you look at the timelines, when do you think is the right time for small manufacturers to kind of shift to smart manufacturing? Is there a due diligence required to do that? If you can explain with a scenario, it will be really great.
I think Anilji made a very valid point, and I think this is something which is going to hit us anyways. so the earlier you do it, the better. The more you resist, the more you're creating trouble for your own self. The world is changing, and today in the digital world, you're like he said, it could be Satara or Nasik or probably like where we are sitting, Manesar. So why are we just supplying only to companies in Manesar? We could be supplying to companies, like you said, in NASA. So that's the scope. So of course, while that is true, that's a scope, but as soon as you go global, the competition is also global. The requirements are also global. So if I'm going to, if I'm a contract manufacturer, like Arvindji said, if I'm a contract manager and I go to Arvindji's facility, he's going to ask me for data. So where do I get that data from? He's going to ask me for tracking for MES system, what was made, when it was made, how it was made, what are the parameters. If I don't have this, I could be having a great product, but how do I validate a great product? How do I validate a great process? So I think now is the time. If not now, then when? And if not with digital, then how? I think it's a great enabler. I personally feel digital space is a great enabler. How you use it, it's a great tool. And it depends upon how flexible you are. And like Arvindji said, it has to be, everyone has to be on board to the last man, because the digital means the entire space is yours. Everything is visible. So you need to have the last man on board with you all the time. And once he's on board with you, then the person who's on the shop floor is on board with you, then it is going to be a very good process. So if you ask me what is the right time, the time is now.
No, absolutely, you're right. And I like your point about when is the right time? Right time is now, because you're already in a digital world. So you need to digitize and you need to do it diligently. I think, you made a very valid point. To ask yourself that question, I think the answer will automatically flow, as you rightly said. So I think, thank you, gentlemen. I think, we have reached the end of our panel discussion.
Anil, with your permission, may I make a small point?
Yeah, please.
To Vipin and Chandra. So the answer to the time and answer to your due diligence, both are intertwined into each other. And what we definitely don't want to do is create another island of automation or smart manufacturing. So that integrated manufacturing, right from shop floor, supply chain, people, when a guy gets on my bus traveling from his home, I need to know that, yes, he is coming for the job today. I don't have to be surprised that this guy has not come up or not turned up. So whom do I put there on that machine? That kind of a visibility, that kind of a entire ecosystem of being smart is going to be very important. And companies must do it today, but if they're not prepared, frankly, they need to take some time, get themselves prepared, do that homework, and then jump into it. Because that's the thing. I mean, a lot of CEOs, we see that they are feeling the pressure कि मेरा competition कर रहा है, मैं नहीं करूंगा तो I'll get left out. Yes, you are getting left out, but you are not preparing yourself when in time. So what can you do? So that they need to look at that complete thing as an ecosystem, integration with an ERP, warehouse management system, smart HR, smart manufacturing. So just doing one, like 4 wheels on a car, just one wheel running fast, other 3 not pulling together, that will not be possible. So we, of course, do smart manufacturing, but we always say that we need to integrate with the rest of the world, whether it's an ERP like SAP or something else, or CRM system, and so on and so forth. Unless you integrate, you will not get the benefits. And the ROIs that people talk about, we say you do it, and we guarantee you complete payback of the system in 6 months. But if you do what we tell you to do, people don't do that, so that's okay. But between 6 to 18 months, it is really possible to recoup the entire investment you can do in the project. And I think that's fantastic from any perspective. So that's my kind of a thing about timing and preparedness.
Thank you, Dr. Tilak. Vipin, would you like to add something, because we have reached the end of the discussion? Is there anything that you want to add in the end? I think the last point Dr. Tilak made about integration, is very, very true. The analogy with four wheels in a car, if one wheel is running fast, the others are not, you will not get anywhere. So do you want to add something?
No, I completely agree with Tilak sir. So it is so relatable. I mean, I have witnessed the companies, they have they have somewhat partially been, the processes have been upgraded, and part of the process, most of the process have been operating manually. But whatsoever the output is not there. So even we have given them like the advice. So unless they are not going to upgrade themselves fully, it is not going to help them.
Great. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your perspectives, on how small manufacturers can really go digital. I think some really, really great insights have come out from all of you. And I'm sure that, they will really help manufacturers take the right decision and, about leveraging digital manufacturing. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Shailendra. Thanks, Vipin. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and with this, now we come to the end of today's
Thank you very
panel
much.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope really everyone who is viewing this has found it useful, and it will help you check out your own path to digital manufacturing. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.